We're not done yet. We're going to append another Python node underneath here. What we're going to do is, if we look at the grid, we can see that the grid's quite small, right? What's going to happen is we're going to simulate buildings in place further on in the system. And for that to be successful, what we're going to do is I'm going to take this block and this block and this block and move them all to the center. But after my simulation is done running, I want to basically take all the buildings that we've simulated in place and move them all back to where the original block used to be. So for that, we're going to create an attribute that stores the original block position on every single point. And the reason I'm doing that after each pack node is because otherwise I'd have every single point on the outline of a block storing its original position. We only want the center point for this. And the pack node actually just creates a centroid in every bit. So it's a really useful little thing to do. So we should have this standard code in there. And I'll just block the code out again for you so it's easier to follow. We're going to create an original block position attribute because we need somewhere to store it. And what else we're going to do is we're going to set the original block position for each point and move it to the center because we do want to have every single block in the center for us to simulate it on further on. So set original block pos for each point and move to center. All right, so let's go ahead and create a variable for this. Original block pos is geo.add attrib as we've done before. Open and close brackets. We're going to create a point attribute. Who.attrib_type.point. We're going to call it the same as our variable to avoid confusion. And we're going to initialize the value. And we're just going to initialize it to 0. But we'll set it in a moment for each point. It's just so it has a value. All right, that seems correct. Yep, code is not failing. I can imagine you might want to use a shorter name for these variables. That's of course perfectly fine, but because I want everyone to be able to follow around and in case people use my system after me, this might be a bit longer to type, but it's very clear what it is. So that's why I like to sometimes use longer names for these things that actually describe what it contains. We're going to make another for loop. Let's remove my little typo there. For point in geo.points and with a colon. Position is point dot position. So what this does is the dot position attribute then fetches the position of each point, right? And it stores it in our variable called position. So this way I can access this. Now we're going to set the attribute value we just created. Point.set attrib value, open and close brackets, which is what we're going to set. So let's just copy this, paste it in there. And we're going to set the position or the original block pos to position. So this is going to override our 000 attribute or 000 value and set its current position there because that's what we've just passed in here. And now we're going to say center. Now we all know what the center is value-wise. It's 000. So let's do that again. And now we're going to say point.setPosition, which is another function that sets the position of each point. And the points we fetch here from all the points in the geo. And we're going to just pass in center. So now what we should see is that all of them are in the center, which is exactly what we want because this is important for the simulation to work. But if we now look at our spreadsheet, we should have a point attribute containing the original block position. So once our simulation is done, we should be able to move everything back to where it's supposed to be. Let's just append the null for clarity. Visualize that, color it green because it's our output, and we're going to call it out centered blocks. And because it's capitalized, if you ever have to select a node from a drop-down menu, it will put that up top, so it's easier to find. All right, so the next stage is getting all the buildings in. And it's empty, of course, because we're going to write a script that does it for us.